Welcome to Thinkin Bros. My name is Chris.
And I'm Alex.
We're your favorite corner store philosophers trying to figure out life one conundrum at a time. And today we're going to completely switch up the formula of the episode.
Whoa.
Our original idea, but we did steal it from Very Bad Wizards. So we're going to have an opening segment. Then we're going to introduce the main topic we're going to talk about. Then we're going to discuss it for a while and then give specific practical applications because that's the goal of the show in essence. So we're going to try to make philosophers sound useful. So we're going to actually start with a little psychology study from 1964, I believe, and it's the
Bystander Effect.
yeah, it's the famous bystander effect. Do you want to introduce what it is?
Yeah, sure. I think what prompted a lot of research on it initially, or maybe this was just something that popularized it, although it existed before, is there was a murder, a Kitty Genovese murder, in which the newspapers reported on the next day that this was a girl that was killed like in an alley that was quite public in a city, and like no one reported her death for a while, her stabbing for a while, and people allegedly just walked past and, you know, nobody did anything. And the media had headlines like, I don't remember the number, like 30 people just walked by a murder victim, or like 60 people walked by a murder victim. People are horrible, and all sorts of implications about human nature and everything. And the psychological concept associated with that is the bystander effect, where if something happens, like a problem comes up, you're conflicted between, you know, reporting or doing something about the event, or just walking by and carrying on with your day. And the bystander effect is the fact that the more people there are around you, the more you're likely to think, someone else will do it, I don't have to do it, and just walk by.
Yeah, and the way the study, actually, the specific phenomenon is called diffusion of responsibility. Makes sense. And the way they conclude the study is if people understand the situational forces that can make them hesitate to intervene, they may better overcome them. So this is specifically what we're going to try to do today. And also, did you notice anything while reading this?
Sure, but I don't know what you're talking about exactly.
Right, words, sentences, right? But the main thing for me was, did you see how more of a storytelling approach old psychology had? Like qualitative, the kind that I like.
Oh, how like the study was readable?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was readable, but then they were saying like, okay, well, you know, our subjects entered, then their reactions were such. One of them said, oh no, the person is having a fit, right? It's like a storytelling approach to psychology.
I see. But I mean, it's sort of like reporting of qualitative variables or like qualitative stuff instead of numbers.
Exactly.
Because studies now would be like, the majority did this, and the thing is, you have to operationalize behavior, right? If you want to report empathy. Yeah, you're right, though. If you want to report empathy, now they're going to be like, okay, empathy is all of this below the list. And then they group all this together into empathy. But for this, it was like, oh, this is actually quotes from the people that were in the study, which is really interesting. And I think, yeah, you're right. Made me feel like it was easier to understand the study because, you know, I could imagine myself there as the researcher, you know, talking to people.
You're wondering the same things as them. It's not like some complex statistics. It's like they say, well, look, these people didn't intervene. They're asking why in the process of the conclusion of the study. Then they're giving potential answers. These days, it's just like, well, a significant effect was found on this. Copperfield's in uncertainty variable was 0.8. Like, whatever. Psychology lost its heart. But that's definitely for another time. Now, what's interesting here is I've identified two factors. Maybe you saw something else, but essentially, everyone didn't decide to help the same way, right? Men, women.
Can you say this? What this exactly was? Because I guess I don't really know. Did you just read the discussion too?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
What do you mean exactly?
what was the situation? You didn't say what the study was.
Yeah, well, essentially, I think some people were given the task to look at a patient inside a hospital room, and then they were also told that from the other side someone else is watching or something like that. I'm probably misrepresenting it, but
I mean, I just read only the discussion. I may have read this before. I think it's all over audio, and so they have like a mic and headphones, and they're watching someone else or checking on someone else, and making sure they're okay or something, and then they hear through the audio that the person is having a fit, whatever a fit is, some
a
sort of
seizure
problem
or something like that.
Yeah, and it says there that they hesitated between staying on the intercom and leaving, right? Because they have to leave the room and then tell the researchers that something is happening. Well, if they want to. And they're also told either that no one else is watching the patient or listening to the patient, or that many other people or some people are checking on the patient. So that's while there were actually none, right? So it's like perceived other people.
Right. So the perceived presence of others is a big factor that makes you kind of diffuse the responsibility. But now, from a moral approach, what's interesting is how can you fight this? Because honestly, I'm one to overestimate my moral abilities, right? Like, oh, I would sacrifice my life for Pakistan or something like that. But
Well,
But honestly, in this situation, if I saw something something happening like that on the side of the road, I would definitely hesitate, like a lot. And
yeah.
even I can't confirm my final decision. It would probably be to walk away, really reasonably. So what I've identified here is that what matters and what can help people actually react is communication and unique ability. Okay, so I think in the situation that you told that popularized the study, people were actually watching from their apartments. So they were separated by the glass of their apartments. They were just watching on the street.
I'm not sure. I think people walking by were also...
No, it was, I mean, it was written, but okay. But essentially, they identified it here. So essentially, it's the same thing. It's the perceived, like, okay, these other people are looking at it, and therefore, I'm assuming somebody called the police. I'm assuming somebody's rushing down to help. So that's the big thing. Now, here it says that males are more responsible than females for direct interventions that require physical strength.
Yeah.
For example, swimming down to something. So this is very interesting because when you perceive that you have a unique ability that others can't share, you're going to be the one rushing down. And this is what's portrayed, in all the plane scenes when somebody's having a fit, whatever that means, and the doctor rushes down. Well, obviously everyone's also saying, is there a doctor on board? But the doctor's rushing down and helping the patient.
Right.
Right. And it might seem trivial, but imagine the bystander effect happening in a hospital. Imagine everyone has a packed schedule, and let's say someone who just entered the ER, so it's not anyone's patient, it's not anyone's responsibility. Every doctor is rushing somewhere. Somebody, like, I don't know, trips and falls quite
badly.
Yeah, quite badly in the while entering, not the ER, but the emergency room or something like that. No, that's the same thing. What's the thing where they just enter? Whatever, the waiting room.
Reception?
Yeah, the reception or whatever. And many doctors are walking by. It's not unimaginable that the doctors are going to go talk to their cancer patients and before helping that person.
I thought you were going the other way. Okay.
No, I'm saying none of the doctors have the unique ability because other doctors are watching. So everyone could help that person.
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about unique ability. I would say just,
Well, okay, it's also the context of a hospital and their job is to help, but everyone has packed schedules. Look, I wouldn't help. No, I'm just kidding.
But that's why you're not a doctor.
Not a doctor, but I'm sure we could imagine a thought experiment where exactly the effect that I'm talking about works. Where, well, we all have this specific unique ability, but it's also like usually when you have the unique ability, it's also straight up your job to do the thing, right? If someone's drowning and you're a
lifeguard,
You're not gonna sit around with your lifeguard buddies and tell yourself, somebody else is gonna swim over there. It's also your job. But
Sure. I would just say it's not like a unique ability. I'd say that the reason people don't help just bystanders when they're not sure about what's going on, if they're having a seizure, because most people don't know what's going on in a seizure and don't know how to help, and so they do nothing. But if there were 20 doctors around, it's not because of their unique ability. It's just because they have the ability.
No, but here the study goes deeper than that, because the people even hesitate to call help, right? Because of the diffusion of the responsibility, they don't even call the help.
Yeah.
Because that's not a unique ability that they have. So if everyone could do it...
What unique ability?
To call help.
Well, it's not because they don't have a unique ability. It's because,
if everyone can do what they're theoretically morally supposed to do,
right, they're
going to feel less responsible. That's true. In the same way as, let's say you're a time traveler. Well, this is going to give you a really good thought experiment. Let's say you're a time traveler in the 1920s, and you're the only one around with the phone, and another time traveler is a doctor. Are you going to feel more compelled to call the doctor in a crowd of people watching a person have a seizure? That's a masterful thought experiment.
Sure, but I think the point is not... Look, the point more of diffusion of responsibility is not... and they mentioned this in the study too, is, for me, it's less, other people can do it. That's definitely like a big part of it. But I think most of it is like, I don't want to seem dumb and kick up a fuss about nothing. I think the reason you're hesitating, like on the side of the road when you're saying you're driving by and you see something on the side of the road, is that you don't want to seem dumb, right? It's like if you're on the playground and something happens and you don't want to be like, oh my god, teacher, whatever, and then like someone already told her, or like nothing is going on. You don't want to seem dumb, and that's why you don't do it. If you could help, you would help.
Yeah, but you can call the police, and these people don't. Or they don't call the assistant to help with the person on the audio having a seizure. My point is, the fact that men intervene more than the average in situations where only their physical abilities are required shows that when you perceive that you have the unique ability to help, the diffusion of responsibility doesn't happen to the same extent. That's the point. I think them mentioning that.
I think you're pulling unique out of nowhere. It's just you have the ability to help.
Well, unique just means that you're kind of aware that statistically people don't have that ability. And I'm not saying you're the only one in the world. I'm just saying that the reason direct intervention often requires skill, knowledge, or physical power. It may involve danger. American cultural norms and Berkowitz results seem to suggest that males are more responsible than females for this kind of direct intervention. Why would this be the case? And all I'm saying is, I'm not saying it's the driving factor. All I'm saying is this: in this study, where it's just listening to an audio and calling or not calling the lady who can help, these people know that the person on the other side of the glass has the exact same ability to help. Therefore, they feel the diffusion of responsibility. If a lifeguard off duty knows they're the best swimmer in the bunch, they're going to feel guiltier after if they didn't help, because they know they had the best chances of helping.
I mean, sure, I'm not debating ability at all. I just don't like unique, and I really don't like the hospital example, because a doctor would help if someone falls down and starts bleeding.
Yeah, sure, because it's their job. It just happens to be their job.
If they have another patient whose problems are less pressing, they're gonna help the patient that just fell down.
Because they're in the context of the hospital and it's their job.
Yeah, but you were arguing that they wouldn't help.
I know, it was a bad thought experiment. What I'm saying is, you need to find somewhere where everyone has a unique ability, what I call a unique ability, and everyone knows they have it, because it's all about perception, right? It's all about, 40 other people are staring at the glass. They all have the same ability as me to rush down the stairs. They all have phones, so I don't have to do it. But if you're Superman and you can fly down there and stop the killer, you're going to feel more responsible for that situation. That's all I'm saying. And in that sense, you simply have to just defeat just being aware of this makes you kind of understand that everyone feels that way, And you know what? In that sense, if the bystander effect is a strong effect, you have the unique ability to see past the bystander effect and know that, in fact, while everyone has a phone, you're unique in being courageous enough to use it and bypass the embarrassment. But let's get to the embarrassment, because I do think it's kind of the most important part. Well, the other thing is communication, because here they make a distinction between a situation where there's a fire in the building and people are talking. They're like, okay, you know, did everyone evacuate? They're going to shout for danger or whatever. And it seems as though people want to help each other. So here, you could manipulate that factor. And let's say you see something in the street. You can come up to someone and ask, what's going on here? Do you know? And if they don't know, at least you have the confirmation of another human that they don't know. Because the big thing about the embarrassment is, if you could communicate with at least one other person and understand that they're also not in the know just as much as you, it opens up a world of possibility where, okay, if at least one more person that, if I'm not the only one not knowing what's going on here, it's plausible that more people don't know.
Increasing the bystander effect, right? I think that's
no, because it would only be embarrassing to help someone if everyone was in on something. Here's an example. I thought about this. Have you ever seen those movies with like kind of hidden cameras being filmed, or the camera is just like out of the perception of a person who's walking by? And I don't know, there's a scene of violence and the bystander just enters the movie set and kind of interrupts that because they want to stop the situation.
Oh, okay, sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So if you're looking at someone who looks official and who's observing the scene, and you just walk up to them, like for example, I was once entering my gym, and there were lights everywhere, cameras, blah blah blah. Instead of just walking into the gym and interrupting the shot, I asked the first person that I saw there sitting on a chair, which, you know, obviously it was quite obvious that it was a movie set, but in the same way, well, okay, not in the same way, but you get it. I just asked, you know, I whispered, what's going on? And they said, oh, well, we're filming for 1 more hour and a half and you have to come back later. So it's just, I don't think it would increase the bystander effect to just communicate. So if you break the communication barrier, you're going to feel less embarrassed whatever decision you make, because you're going to realize that the other person doesn't know. And if they do know,
okay,
you'll know exactly how to act. If they're like, oh, this is a movie set.
No, okay, then I guess I agree with your thing, but what isn't true is that having more people around instantly increases communication, because the point is that in this study, there weren't people around, you know, there wasn't any communication at all.
Just perception, right?
Perception of presence and of watching, and they couldn't communicate. Supposedly, you know, I'm pretty sure I remember the study right, and that's how it went. But having other people around, why I'm saying it increases the bystander effect, which I'm pretty sure it does, is because there's no communication and there's other people there. There was another study on the bystander effect where they were in a waiting room and smoke started to fill the room slowly, and you know, it could be fire.
That would be so awkward. I'd just be like,
yeah, that's exactly what happened. There's smoke slowly filling the room. It could be a fire that is gonna kill everyone, right? And there's other people around that are in on the experiment, right? And there's the subject just sitting there, and people, like, once again, the effect was found. Like, some people or most people don't report the fire until there's like you can't see through the fog.
Wow, that's funny. Yeah. Wow.
And but the reason is because when you're in public, you know, unless you're like you sort of don't care and you're in your own world, you know, you could be like walking around and singing your songs and making everyone uncomfortable, but most people keep up a face in public and like want to seem cool, calm, and collected. And that's how you act in an emergency too. You know, there's smoke starting to fill the room. I look at you, your face is normal. Okay, everything is fine. I look away. My face is normal now. You look at me, my face is normal. Nothing's going on. Everything's fine. Like, smoke, it's normal that in a hospital waiting room, smoke is filling the room or something. I don't know, some inference from that. And I guess then I agree with you, because there's no communication in that case. There's nonverbal communication of I don't want to seem like a fool, and I don't want to make a scene out of nothing. But if people were actually to talk to each other and be like, do you know what the smoke is? You would be like, no. And we'd be like, okay, then let's figure it out together.
That'd be a pretty good question.
Yeah.
And that's why extroverts are more moral than introverts. So it's very interesting. I think if we were to come to recommendations, because I do understand how in this day and age specifically, right, with cameras around, blah, blah, just, people, you can see people like filming a tragedy instead of going to help. It's even more enhanced. And especially because, imagine someone filming and you having to go and help and intervene. That's going to be documented forever. And if you don't have a unique ability, especially, and you're just some guy who wants to help a person having a convulsion and you don't even know what that means or what it is, yeah, I wouldn't be inclined to help very much. And especially, with the people, the American dream of being like independent, no one's going to want to help someone, especially in a more ambiguous situation where it's not a medical emergency, and just be met with, I can deal with it myself or something like that, right? Like, imagine a person at a gym having a very wrong form, like a newbie at a gym having a very wrong form, and they're like filming themselves. I would never be inclined, even if I have like 3 years of gym experience and now I know exactly what's wrong with them and I know they're going to injure themselves, I'm not going to come up to them. Realistically, that's the truth. So I think the embarrassment is kind of the obvious thing. I think what you could do is, as a solution, we can conclude this, is one, break the communication barrier. Because as soon as you have the confirmation of one other person that you're not the only one in the not in the know, it kind of deals with a lot of it. So my recommendation, become more extroverted. Change your personality.
Yeah, I agree. My advice would have been that I see like way too many people be socially anxious. Like it's not becoming cool, but it's becoming mainstream and
antisocial social club, right?
Yeah, and commonplace to just be like, oh my god, this is so embarrassing. They gave me the wrong coffee. I can't do anything. It's not like I'm gonna go see the person, which is absolutely ridiculous. And you know what the reason to practice that is emergencies and moments where you actually need it. You develop
I mean, not even like just the thing you described.
Yeah.
I am a victim of this, right? I always say, give me a black coffee. They give me with milk. Now I've started saying, and probably embarrassingly so, but I'm just done. I'm fed up with it. I say, can I have a black coffee? The one without sugar and milk, please?
Yeah.
And I say this every time, and it sounds kind of stupid. Like, okay, does this person not think I know what black coffee is? And yes, indeed, I think you don't know what black coffee is, although you work here and you're getting paid, even though it's minimum wage and you're just trying to make ends meet. So, yeah. So again, here's my best recommendation, and let's see how you react to this. Act on what the situation is and not on your interpretation of it, right? Don't say, hey guys, I think there's a fire. Say, is it normal that there's a little bit of smoke coming out? Because usually the rooms I'm in don't get filled with smoke. Or when a person is in a stroke or something, you're not a doctor. Obviously, what's embarrassing would be to say, hey, that person is having a stroke and they're just, is there a kind of yoga that kind of releases pressure or something? Don't give your interpretation. If you're embarrassed, don't give your interpretation. Just give exactly what you see, because the senses don't lie. If you see something, say something.
Yeah. I think it has to do with sort of letting go of your ego a bit.
You have to. But not even to the extent that you would think. It's not like, hey, is it normal that there's a person on that roof? That's all it takes. It's not like, oh my god, there's a person, he's gonna jump. Like, I think you don't know he's gonna jump. It may be a movie set.
It's the difference between like a high school kid interacting with girls and an adult guy interacting with girls. It's like, in the first situation, you have an idea of what you're supposed to be like, and you're trying to put that idea in front of the girl, and you're not real, you're awkward, and it's not productive ultimately. And an adult person is more, assumes more of, I am the way I am, and if I'm going to have a relationship with this girl, she's going to know eventually the way I am, and so I might as well just act the way I am, and also it's productive because I learned that way. And that's the way you have to approach these situations. It's not, I'm supposed to know everything and be ultra cool, and cool guys don't look at explosions, and so I'm just going to ignore things. You can be like, oh, this is potentially a danger to my life, and I would like to not die, and so let's inquire about it.
But even then, like, that's you're even giving the most generous one where it's the room filled with smoke, like, especially practice to help others, right? Because even then, like, you're eventually you're gonna get over in some situation of the bystander effect where your life is also in danger. The imminent danger is gonna overrun your embarrassment. But in situations where you have to help others and there are other, like, another 40 people on the street, you're gonna walk away with a clean conscience, and that's dangerous. That's
right.
the thing.
So just practice to break the communication barrier, I think, and just learn that it's normal to talk to people. It doesn't even seem normal anymore to talk to people. Like, it's so rare. I had one guy in my recent memory that just, like, we had eye contact in one of our classes, and he said, "What did you do this weekend?" And I was like, "Whoa, this guy's a revolutionary."
Uh-oh. Yeah, after the isolation, before I used to walk
the big
around,
isolation.
The big isolation. But before, I used to walk around the park like 2 hours a day. Everyone said hi. Everyone looked at us in the eyes. Man, yesterday I walked around for 2 hours. I think one person looked at me and barely nodded.
It's like going to the US, right? It's like the difference between here and the US.
Yeah, like while you're in the interaction, but breaking the interaction barriers seems impossible anymore.
That's why you just have to let go of your ego and do it yourself, because other people probably want the same thing.
Yeah, and also, well, you know what? I feel like it's taking way too long.
Yeah.
Now, a word from our sponsors. Do you like cookies? Let me answer that for you. Yes. Do you like cream? Well, it's like asking if the circumference of the Earth is 40,075 kilometers.
It is.
Duh. Right? Using new technology, your two favorite foods are now combined together into your new favorite snack. Oros. Oros. The whole is greater than the sum of two parts. Thank you. So yeah, that's our new sponsor. So
first sponsor, right?
Let's get to your first sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So
thank you. Okay, and now we're gonna move on to the discussion of
the main segment.
The main segment. Today's writer is Marcus Aurelius, and so we just went through the first chapters of the Meditations and highlighted some quotes that we thought were interesting and perhaps applicable to real life. And the conclusion of this segment is going to be us trying to apply, some of this stoic wisdom to real life, as TikTok claims to do so often. So we have book 2, chapter 1, book 2.1, I guess. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoers has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but the same mind, and possessing this a share of the divine, and so none of them can hurt me. No one can implicate me in ugliness, nor can I feel angry at my relative or hate him. We were born to work together like feet, hands, and eyes, like the 2 rows of teeth, upper and lower. To obstruct each other is unnatural. To feel anger at someone, to turn your back on him, these are obstructions. And I think this brings up, 2 recurrent themes in this. First of all, the fact that nothing external can affect you. You have the control over what affects you. So, all these dishonest, bad people that you meet today, they can't affect you, and nothing can get you to turn to ugliness apart from you and your own resentment that you create about the world. And number 2 is a sort of concept of wholeness, which I think you appreciated with your recent initiation into Buddhism.
Yeah, my long-standing Buddhism. Yeah,
your lifelong devotion to Buddhism.
Yeah.
Of cooperation between people, and everything is everything, and we should all work together, and everything is designed to work together.
I think most of all, unless you had more to say, most of all, it's the thing we said in the episode with Phil, and I think there's another quote that better captures it, but the wrongdoings of others, if you see Earth as an organism and this holistic approach and non-individualistic, which we often, forget ourselves in Western culture. The actions of others are simply nature acting, right? I gave the example in the Phil episode, the first Phil episode, of the tornado hitting your house. Would you ever be able to say that that is unjust?
Right.
You can't really spin it as unjust, but the reason we can say that, oh, that person who cut me off in traffic, that is unjust, is because it's acted by a human. And I think there's a productive side to that, where if you call it unjust, then now it's up to correction. Right? I think that laws are useful in that sense, where that person unjustly killed people, therefore we're going to imprison him and deliver justice. And that's productive. But the other side is, you can definitely have the image of an anxious person just walking around the street thinking the whole world is against them. You go to your job, maybe you have clients and they're rude to you, and you don't understand that that's just nature being nature, right? Some people, there's a yin to everyone's yang, and some people will always be rude. That's just their norm. Episode 1, we talked about how if someone acts in a certain manner, statistically, it's very plausible that that is the person they are.
Bless your soul if you listen to that.
Yeah. Actually, a really good episode, but despite the audio. And the thing about that is, if you think you're at the center of the world, which Westerners usually push, right? Make yourself, right? The American dream, get your riches, live in a mansion, isolated from everyone. You're going to also think that others' actions are specifically a reaction to you in the world. And it's a very mistaken perception.
Yeah, and book 5, point 25 is, so other people hurt me. That's their problem. Their characters and actions are not mine. What is done to me is ordained by nature. What I do by my own.
That's what I meant by the point. Yeah, that's exactly it. Ordained by nature.
But I think what this brings up particularly is, so other people hurt me. That's their problem, and it is their problem, because people that act like this in human societies where collaboration is key, and a key factor of going up in any hierarchy is that people know they can rely on you, that you provide some value to them. And if you're just rude and don't help anyone ever, yeah, it's not going to help you.
Well, I think, there are 3 ways to see this. Either the social response to you being like that, or you're just going to be shunned and not get help from anyone when you need it. Then there's the mental illness part, where if you are a normal person and choose to act that way, because realistically being mean is easier, right? It's less embarrassing to be the stoic. Well, I'm going to misuse the word stoic, but like stoic and indifferent, you're going to feel something unsettling at the depth of your brain, and you're always going to be bothered by that, right? Others mistreating me is their problem. Their conscience is going to take care of all the punishment they need to have. And why I said mental illness is because, well, unless they're mentally ill, of course. If they're a psychopath, they're not going to care, but that's a very small percentage of the population.
Yeah.
And also there's another thing. I forgot. Right. Lack of self-awareness. Where people have not questioned themselves enough and think that it's the norm, or that's just them being them, right? And I think there's a balance to, there's a sliding scale of acceptable values of disagreeableness or meanness or whatever, but realistically you will find that you're not going to be very liked by the world, and eventually you're probably going to be pushed toward that interval where it's acceptable eventually, no matter your lack of self-awareness. At some point you can be like at one extreme and think, you know what, that's just me, whatever, and you're going to lose, and eventually you're going to wake up and say, well, look, maybe I need more. It's like introverts, right? I'm just so cool, man. My creative process is just closing my door with a lock, putting a hoodie on. I'm inside, but I still put the hood on, and I take a pen and I create beauty. You're just timid, okay?
What's your problem with introverts today?
Well, my problem is, let me be generous to Freud's accuracy. I hate what I fear to become, And realistically, I was that guy. And I thought, oh, that's just me being me, and I'm so cool for being introverted. I've never did the capital sin of buying antisocial social club merch, but it's still something I related to, and I definitely considered it, which already kind of I deserve severe punishment for.
You're against pathological introvertness.
Well, I think
there's productive introvert. Well, if it's
again,
necessary.
You're just at the bottom of the acceptable scale if you're a productive introvert, right? It enters into my definition. I just think I know a lot of people.
What do you mean you're at the bottom of the acceptable scale? Introversion is the word. Introversion has nothing to do with, well, it is a separate scale than agreeableness or disagreeableness. It's just being comfortable or not comfortable around other people.
I know, and there's statistically proven benefits to being higher on that specific scale.
Sure, but okay, yeah.
I just remember an episode from end of high school that I was trying really to be cool, and I came up to a group of people, part of which I knew, and I was trying to be cool, so I came in with a lot of energy in a joking manner, like, haha, I'm gonna entertain you guys, and it worked for some. And then there's a girl who who I met for the first time there, and didn't talk to me since. And then I asked her friend what was going on, and she said, you just had too much energy for her. And she was like one of those who wore the hood up inside. And yeah, that just bothered me. And it specifically bothered me not because she was so cool and I wanted to be her friend. She's an introvert. I don't want her. But because in the past I know I was that, and I also thought it was cool. And that's kind of brought back up the insecurity of, I wish I could tell you how not cool you are.
214.
Aurelius 214.
Aurelius 214.
Even if you're going to live 3,000 more years or 10 times that, remember, you cannot lose another life than the one you're living now, or live another one than the one you're losing. The longest amounts to the same as the shortest. The present is the same for everyone. Its loss is the same for everyone. And it should be clear that a brief instant is all that is lost. For you can't lose either the past or the future. How could you lose what you don't have? Remember two things: that everything has always been the same and keeps reoccurring. And it makes no difference whether you see the same things reoccur in 100 years or 200, or in an infinite period. That the longest lived and those who will die soonest lose the same thing. The present is all they can give up, since that is all you have. And what you do not have, you cannot lose. I mean, wow. This is what makes me like Marcus Aurelius. First of all, there's the part some may not agree with, which is the cyclical nature of life. Every day is the same. Okay? You think you wore something different? Well, what's the real difference between what you wore? The cotton blend? It's the same thing. You met new people? Okay. What did they provide? Words to you? Is that important to you? I think there's another quote, you may remember it because you read it more recently, where it's like, or maybe I imagined this. You have one day to live. What are you going to do? And you're going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to, reunite with my relatives. I'm going to go and do all my bucket list things, blah, blah, blah. And then he just says like, okay, now turn that into 60 years and go do those things.
I was looking for that quote right now, actually, but I can recount it from memory, I think. It's something like, imagine the gods told you were going to die tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after.
yeah, that's what it was. It's so good.
Unless you were a complete coward, you would not kick up a fuss about exactly when it is. Now realize that the difference between tomorrow and 20 years from now is not that big.
So, I mean, genius, right?
Yeah, that's very, very insightful. I think we were talking about this, like, when we first got into philosophy and talking together, we're like walking in the city. We're going to a restaurant with our parents, I think, and we were talking about this. It's like, we were all hype about, like, we have to live our life as if my death was announced in a week, I would be doing the same things I'm doing right now. And you were like, and I think I am. You said that. And I remember that, which, that's good for you that you thought that. Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so much more powerful than the kind of Instagrammable quote of, live every day as though it was your last. And I think it's one of the objection points I have of popularizing stoicism to 16-year-old kids, because they all think it's just TikTok quotes with associated with cool music, and it's their kind of 3 a.m. inspiration type thing,
Mm-hmm.
where it must be so much more, right? You have to internalize it for real and realize everything that it means. And thought experiments such as the what if the gods told you that you died tomorrow or the day after are so much more powerful than just hearing you should live every day as though it was your last, because that is what I call just giving the conclusion, whereas Marcus Aurelius here in very few sentences gives you the premises on which you would come up to such a conclusion, and that's how you internalize things. And that was my, before the discussion with Phil, and maybe a little bit after too, that's my biggest objection with religion, right? It's just a book full of, it's not even a book full of conclusions, it's just sometimes presented that way.
Yeah, well, I definitely agree that, giving the conclusion, it sounds right. It ticks something in your brain where it's satisfying and sounds good, and it's commonplace now to say stuff like that. But I think this is like a prime mental experiment. What do you call them?
Thought experiment.
Thought experiments. Where you go through the motions as he says the quote. It's 447 for those wondering. Aurelius 447. Where you can imagine, okay, how would I feel if gods announced my death tomorrow or the day after? And is it cowardly to kick up a fuss about whether it's tomorrow or the day after? What would I really be doing? And then it's the punchline is the difference between 2 days and 20 years is not that big, which that's debatable. So some people would attack that. But
just take the perspective of, okay, you're going to die tomorrow or the day after. Okay, well, the day after is double that. Well, imagine that's the difference between 10 years and 20 years, right? Just perspective-wise, that's double something, yeah, I mean, it does put it in perspective. I understand maybe it could be better be phrased, but also, I do think we're both out of that phase, but I definitely was in that phase where, well, actually, no, I never had a fear of death phase, but some people actually philosophically fear death. And I think this can help them the most. Again, you have to internalize it. That's the thing. People are like, live your life to the fullest, or stuff like that. That doesn't mean anything unless you go through the process of, okay, do you realize that you're wasting the thing that you fear to lose through death by fearing death, right? The anxiety of the fear of death is the very thing that is making you waste all that time that you believe to be precious. Well, how precious is it if you're living with a constant anxiety? So, ironically, you're creating your own problem.
Yeah. And what I found throughout also is that some of these insights are very therapy reminiscent. Of some insights that are in this book are sort of the conclusions and the ultimate, the ultimate solutions of some of forms of therapy nowadays. Where the quotes we just read could be related to humanistic therapy, where the goal is to, live in the present and live moment to moment, not get lost in the past, like Freud, or not think about the future too much, and not obsess about all those things, because truly they don't exist. If then we can get into an argument about what exists. But if you were to make an argument about what exists, the present would be the strongest case, I think. The past is just, stored somewhere in your brain.
A reconstruction of your memories, a perception so flawed.
Not even true.
Yeah.
What's true is the experiences you're having right now, what's in front of you, the things you're living through right now, and that's the only thing you can experience truly. And the future, you can't predict. The only thing that exists is now.
Yeah, it's a very Buddhist principle as well. Just seeing time as a sequence of non-connected moments, and you must, exploit the present for what it is. It's pretty powerful. I'm pretty sure we can do an episode on, a main segment on Buddhism as well.
217. I think you'd like to read this one.
Human life, duration, momentary, nature, changeable, perception, dim, condition of the body, decaying, soul spinning around, fortune unpredictable, lasting fame uncertain. Sum up, the body and its parts are a river, the soul a dream and mist. Life is warfare and a journey far from home. Lasting reputation is oblivion. Then what can guide us? Only philosophy, which means making sure that the power within stays safe and free from assault, superior to pleasure and pain, doing nothing randomly or dishonestly and with imposture, not dependent on anyone else's doing something or not doing it, and making sure that it accepts what happens, what it is dealt as coming from the same place it came from. And above all, that it accepts death in a cheerful spirit and nothing but the dissolution of elements from which each living thing is composed. If it doesn't hurt the individual element to change continually into one another, why are people afraid all of them changing and separating? It's a natural thing, and nothing natural is evil. Yeah, let's unpack this. I think let me go back to this. Superior to pleasure and nothing, doing nothing randomly or dishonestly and with pure pleasure, not dependent on anyone else's doing and making sure that it accepts what happens and what is it is dealt as coming from the same place it came from.
Accepts what happens and accepts what it is dealt as coming from the same place it came from.
Is that not interesting for kind of judgments in your interaction with other people and
wait, what is it?
The soul, something with the soul. The power within stays safe and free from assault. And
that's the logos though.
It accepts what happens when
it's talking about the logos.
The way I interpret it is it not that person cut me off in traffic and that comes from kind of their soul, and it wasn't done to affect my soul, kind of thing? Is that what
you in our notes you wrote logos
definition?
Yeah, question mark. And I think logos is sort of, I mean, it's sort of like the stoic god, let's say. Not exactly, but
because I thought it was purpose, I thought it was intelligence, I thought there was reason, I thought it was
reason, yeah. Okay. But it's sort of God in the sense that it's the universal mind from which everything comes. Let's say the organizing principle of the universe, the reason there's not disorder. But also we're sort of God-like in the sense that we have reason and we organize things, and it's rationality also. And somewhere it said, the eternal and unchanging truth, there for those who seek it. That's the logos. Yeah, I think making sure that it accepts what happens and and what it is dealt as coming from the same place it came from. I think that's where it comes from. It's your rationality should accept all other things, and he goes on more, later in the quote about everything being everything else. Is everything comes from the same place? Everything comes from the logos, and if it happens, it must have happened. There was no other choice. But yeah, I just like the first part of that quote, like duration, momentary, nature, changeable. It sounds so like literary, and these notes, the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, he wrote for himself. It was his like journal that he wrote at night of like, oh, I'm going to bed now. Let me write these things as to guide my life or something. He never meant for this to be published, and it's written so artistically. I think it's amazing.
But it's also the type of thoughts one would have. It's very plausible, right? Like I would be like that, like table, stable,
chair, falling.
So
back.
Yeah,
broken.
I think I noted this because soul spinning around. And Marcus Aurelius is a pretty concrete person, right? He's like, okay, don't let other people's judgments affect you because it is only your perception of their judgments that can affect you emotionally. Just focus on that. But then soul spinning around. What does that really mean? Does that just play into it more? Because it seems with literary intentions, because it seems so metaphorical and not like the actual, how do you say it? The usefulness of that statement doesn't seem very palpable. So I think maybe it just plays into the ever-changing nature of things. Maybe it's just that.
Probably, yeah. I just thought you'd like it because then what can guide us? Only philosophy.
Yeah, I wouldn't say this specific quote makes a strong case for that point specifically, because also he doesn't develop. Well, I guess yeah, the paragraph at the end is kind of a. The most interesting thing for me was nothing natural is evil.
Right.
But
That's
the thing is,
that's a big point.
every
In Marcus
person is a
Aurelius, though.
manifestation of the logos.
Yes.
So does evil not exist to that extent?
Evil doesn't exist for him. I mean, yeah, that's where you would oppose to Marcus Aurelius. I think it's just that everything is nature. Nature, dictates everything, and so there can't be anything evil. Everything happens as it's supposed to happen. How would Marcus Aurelius, a leader who certainly went into war many times, how would he explain that that's not evil?
Well, I guess to that extent, his response to that evil, whatever it is, cannot be evil either. So that's
No,
kind of convenient.
certainly. Yeah.
But I'd say what I like through this is that revenge would not be prescribed, right? If someone does something, you and I, we don't agree with, the principle of revenge. If you think everything's just kind of happening, I mean, you retributing for something, aka not stopping further doing of an evil, but specifically returning an evil to someone who did it, wouldn't be prescribed under Marcus Aurelius, right? Someone cuts you off in traffic, you catch up to them and flip them off. You kind of did nothing, right?
Well, one of the points we had is the best revenge is to not be that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah,
That's specifically the quote. The entire quote is I think it's the best revenge is to not be that.
That, yeah.
That's the quote. So good.
And it is.
Yeah, it is. I think the very thing that usually hurts people and makes them want to take revenge is based not on the action necessarily, but on the person's reaction, right? When a bully bullies, they don't get the pleasure from saying, haha, you're fat. They get the pleasure of the embarrassment of the other person. And as soon as you become stoic, the very thing that the wrongdoer, so-called, wants to achieve goes away. And in that sense, even revenge wouldn't even be like even if you accepted that revenge is something you should do, it wouldn't even be justified because they technically didn't do anything wrong because it didn't hurt you, right?
Yeah. I think, I don't know, for more extreme cases where it's like revenge for the murder of my brother or something, but for more banal cases, I think a lot of acts of aggression, and this has to do with my inborn assumption that people are basically good. I think a lot of evil acts people do onto each other, like bullying or something, is motivated by them themselves being hurt, and evil coming from somewhere, some pain, hurting them so much that they have to find ways to work through it, and their way is like, oh, if I suffer, then this person's gonna suffer too, and you don't give them that satisfaction, right? You get bullied and you say, watch me receive this pain you're dealing onto me and become better than you could ever without being evil at all. And I think that shows that evil doesn't have to be perpetrated, in a cycle. And it also shows that good wins. Anyway, this got very philosophical.
Yeah,
Whoops.
but I also, whoops, that's not the intention. But I also think his views on this are very extreme, right? We made a post about kind of this mentality of it's only your perception of events that can affect you, not the events themselves. But nowadays, certainly if someone steals something from you, we would say, well, it's not like an insult, it's very different, so Marcus Aurelius stuff wouldn't apply. But I'm sure he would say, well, no, you're still perceiving the loss of that stuff as something personal, as something to be vengeful for, as something blah, blah, blah. But in reality, that thing was never yours because yours doesn't exist. Everything is changeable. You acquired that thing and then you lost it under the same principles of changeable things. And I'm pretty sure it would extend to the death of a close one. Like, he wouldn't care. Well, theoretically.
I'm not sure that's true. I don't know if we can extend to like the politics of Marcus Aurelius, these things, but
yeah, but and again, he was a leader, so certainly along that path, something had to be sacrificed, or he had to lose something as well. And maybe he even developed that perception despite that.
Sure, but I mean, if he was a leader, society couldn't be held together without laws, and the laws is that murder is illegal, and you have some retribution for,
Well,
for
the
that.
laws only affect you if you choose to be affected by them.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to
Yeah, maybe let's do 2 more.
let's do 5.1. I want to read 5.1 because it's very good. It's very philosophical and I don't know, allegorical, metaphorical. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of? If I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do, or is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm. But it's nicer here. So we were born to feel nice instead of doing things and experiencing them? Don't you see the plants, the birds, the ants and spiders and bees going about their individual tasks, putting the world in order as best they can, and you're not willing to do your job as a human being? Why aren't you running out to do what your nature demands? But we have to sleep sometime. Agreed. But nature set a limit on that, as it did on eating and drinking. And you're over the limit. You've had more than enough of that, but not of working. There, you're still below your quota. You don't love yourself enough, or you'd love your nature too, and what it demands of you. People who love what they do wear themselves down doing it. They even forget to wash or eat. Do you have less respect for your own nature than the engraver does for engraving, the dancer for the dance, the miser for money, or the social climber for status? When they're really possessed by what they do, they'd rather stop eating and sleeping than give up practicing their arts. Is helping others less valuable to you, not worth your effort?
So good, but I also think this is one of the most popular quotes that was popularized by those Stoic channels on
Probably, yeah.
YouTube. And my problem with it is there's a precedent to make here that a cool Stoic aspiring 16-year-old kid isn't yet qualified to make. And he kind of goes, Marcus Aurelius 5.1 kind of goes into this by saying, look at the bees, right? They don't question if they should work, they just do it. But the prerequisite, I would say, is to understand that humans are part of nature. And I think that must be internalized very deeply to understand that we're neither above nor below nature. We're not dominating anything or living with it. To use Buddhist terminology, we arise mutually, right? Alan Watts says, you never see flowers where there aren't bees, and you never see bees where there aren't flowers. Although you see them as 2 separate organisms, they're the same thing. They arise mutually, because that's one existing without the other is impossible. And it's the same thing. We think, we dominate nature, but we eat animals, we still get hunted by animals, we still depend on the quality of the soil. If the earth exploded, we wouldn't exist anymore. We are nature. And in that sense, comparison to bees makes more sense because it evokes something more, right? Right now we're just like, bees are the annoying things that sting me. I'm an American. I will chase the American dream. It seems as though I'm opposed to America, but I love America. But you know what I'm saying? When I'm using
Introverts in America, yeah.
I hate introverts in America. But no, what I mean specifically is just like the Western vision of it, because I'm sure in Asia, Buddhism has held back on that. And I'm sure we're going to get to a study of happiness in Eastern countries, but they're even more happy because of it, because of the more communal living, but whatever. And that's what you have to do. You have to realize before even reading this quote that we're not special. It just so happened that an alignment of molecule. It feels like I don't even know what I'm saying as a scientist, but yeah, an alignment of atoms made it so we developed reason. And that's our biggest blessing and our worst curse, right? Because we now think we're special. But there's a way to use that where you can accomplish the most by dropping that ego of thinking you're special and actually viewing the world like this, and you'll accomplish much more, right? Imagine working like a bee, flying around all day in the search of, serving the queen with the best pollen there is. Not how it works, but you know what I'm saying.
I think this is like a very simple summary of what you should do in your life, he says, follow your nature. And then the bad side of your rationality could try to rationalize everything and be like, oh, but what is my nature? Bees clearly do this, but they could be doing more. I could be doing this. I have many options. I can do whatever. You just have to stop thinking, like get up out of bed and do your work, whatever your work is. I don't know. I feel like that brings a feeling of accomplishment, and you don't have to think that much about, oh, what my purpose is in life. I think taking on responsibility and doing your job brings you that sense of accomplishment.
See, the problem is for me here again. This is a rich quote, but it misses so much because, well, again, nothing against Marcus Aurelius, by the way. Again, these were his personal notes. He never intended them to be published.
He missed nothing because he knew all of this setup in his mind before.
Exactly, that's the thing. So it's not their fault. It's not his fault. It's the fault of the people who are popularizing it. And he says here, "Was this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm?" And the thing is, well, yeah, when you look at his like nature argument, well, it is true that in nature we are programmed to feel good when we do such a thing. We are programmed to feel as though hedonistic activities bring us pleasure. So how could that not be living in accordance with nature, to just stay under the blankets because it feels good, because nature intended me to do so? And that's very hard. And that's when you have to understand that if you look at anything else on Earth, or even the history of humans, you are standing in this spot because the bee was flying around all day, finding the best pollen, pollinating those flowers, and then the flowers grew, and then it made rich soils, and then the farmer worked all day to retrieve blah, 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 and that farmer is your grandfather's grandfather, and blah, blah, blah. Like, you are here because of that. And this is specifically the society of victims, where the mere option of not doing these things is what causes the reflection. Go back 100 years. It's not, for 99% of people, it's not even an option to stay under the blankets. Nowadays, it is. Nowadays,
we probably have a life as luxurious as an emperor had
exactly.
at the time.
And he's still commenting on this. I mean, I'm sure this is observed behavior. This is, that's a very good point. He had the option of, you know what, today, I got the riches, I got the power, I don't have to do anything.
Whereas his people were probably dying from the flu because...
Right. The other people in his...
Marcus Aurelius is us.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah.
But...
but that's the thing, right? Those people didn't even have the luxury of having that reflection, and this is why it's so powerful today, because suddenly we're living like these emperors, right? We have that couch, we can just come back from work and get free entertainment infused into our brains through Netflix. Those people, man, like 16 hours a day retrieving potatoes, and that's what it is. And you don't even have time for philosophy. Now we have time for philosophy.
Retrieving potatoes.
Yeah, I think we can end now.
Yeah,
unless
sure.
you have a favorite one.
I have just one more thing about. Yeah, there's a lot of quotes we didn't discuss. We won't have time, but I just got hyped up for virtue ethics once again. Virtue ethics is an ethics, a conception of morality that focuses on good traits within someone, the trait of courage and honor and dutifulness, as opposed to other ethics like consequentialism or deontology that focus on actions and what specific actions are good or bad, and from that you can infer how you should live. But Marcus Aurelius focuses on, you have to do your job, you have to wake up in the morning, you have to be kind, you have to do all these things. And I think virtue ethics, I don't know, it's just more inspiring than ethics of that are about actions.
Right. It's like, what wish you do? What's your intuition about this trolley problem? It's like, no, just be a courageous person right now. Whatever. Exude courage. It doesn't matter who you kill.
That's a good meme. Exude courage.
I actually like it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I did forget. I did lose my way in all these Kantian things along the years. And that's what they get you started with. That's how you start philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Intro to philosophy is, hey guys, welcome to virtue ethics. Here's how you think about things. Or
not virtue ethics.
No, they do get you started on consequentialism, don't they? For me, it was even before that. Yeah. The way I started philosophy was on the virtue ethics. I had a class on Aristotle before that.
Anyway, I think there is a way of thinking too much about ethics where you're thinking about the actions, and there's endless debates to have about if specific actions are good or not. But more generally in life, I think it's good to just live by guidelines. You should not be lazy. Get out of bed, do your job. If you go into overanalyzing some of these things, you forget about the fact that you should not be lazy, you should be courageous, you should be dutiful, and all these things, which should really be the focus for some people, including me. You know, I like the format.
Yeah, I really like the format.
Yeah.
I thought the opening segment was going to be 15 minutes, but whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's too much of a, staple of the show. We can't drop the figured it out rating. But what can it mean? I think it's about how practical did we make, because the specific thing we wanted to do is discuss the philosophy itself and then have a segment on the practicality of it. But we also put the practicality part into the discussion, because that's just how Stoicism works. Maybe for the next one, we're going to do specifically what I said, because we can't forget to do the practical part. So my thing is, how well did we adapt the whatever philosophical piece we chose to modern life? That can be the new figured it out rating. And I mean, I'd say 9, 8, something like that.
Yeah, I'll go with 8 too. Yeah.
All right.
I think it was more like of just an interesting conversation on meditations.
Yeah, we're gonna get more complex, right? We're gonna get into Hobbes and stuff like that. Really.
and we didn't have time either to do a dedicated segment, but I'm happy with it.
We integrated it.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot for listening. Go to thinkingbros.com for my blog, my highly requested blog. It's still coming out, guys. It's still coming out. Don't worry. And
get a lot of questions, actually.
We'll get to all of them. And contact us at thinkingbros@gmail.com if you want to send a little feedback about the episode. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
See ya.